Welcome to the 13th set of exchanges that we are going to have today. This is the third part of the set of ideas where we are discussing evidence, because we discovered that the human mind, had to change its nature of exploration in 2008 when OECD changed the purpose from prosperity to well-being. A research hypothesis and research methodology that gives evidence of well-being is being discussed, and this is the third part of the four-part series which is doing that. And among all the interactions, this is the 13th interaction. So we ended the last session by examining the human being and the well-being idea that relates to the human being. So we discussed ancient wisdom's three perspectives to it. So let us summarize what ancient wisdom said in the last session about humans and about the idea of well-being that relates to humans. The basis of the recognition of a human being is through a body, a physical body. This concept is agreed upon by both current wisdom and ancient wisdom. The human being has a mind. This too is agreed upon by current and ancient wisdom. Both current and ancient wisdom state that the body is directed by the mind. After this, the differences may start. Current wisdom states that sense perception is the first way of knowing. Ancient wisdom says that following sense perception leads to crisis. Therefore, ancient wisdom's education trains the intellect to direct the human mind to live in the awareness of the essence, or what we have discovered as selfless love. This occurs by transforming the heart. After the heart is transformed, should the mind be used. All crises are because this procedure has not been followed. The evidence given here is how awareness is created and the body is looked after. Till now, this is the nature of evidence that we have seen, that how awareness is created and the human body has been looked after. How to use the mind. Now in this section, we will see evidence of what is possible with selfless love. This will be the third dimension of well-being from the use of the mind. After the awareness of selfless love has been created through education and preparing the human body to live life has been ensured through good health. So what guides the mind currently? If it is it the human essence, or is it sense organs of the human body? We know that the animal kingdom too is using the sense organs as the primary way of knowing. Education curriculum must be clear about this. The IB theory of knowledge has 8 ways of knowing. And what is ancient wisdom doing? It has 8 ways of transforming all of them. So let's look at sense perception, the first way of knowing. This is, according to ancient wisdom, this is something we share with the animal world. What perception can help humans declare their distinction from the animal world? That is the primary focus of education. Is it the essence that Feuerbach feels Hegel has placed outside humans? Feuerbach says it is inside them, but it is inside them as sensuousness. And what does ancient wisdom say? That yes, it is inside them, but as selfless love. That's the essence. Now let's look at the second way of knowing, that is reason. Now, does animal world's sense perception lead to an animal instinct? Some amongst the modern world today celebrate capitalism as an animal spirit. They say we want to revive the animal spirits in capitalism to create more GDP and get the world out of a recession. Ancient wisdom, Indian wisdom, says that human reason should be guided by human essence, not animal spirit. Now let's look at the third way of knowing, which is emotion. Now, if the emotion is going to be based on an animal instinct or sense perception, it can get uncontrollable. If human essence is a guide for emotion, then the emotion can be directed to create well-being for oneself and for all others. So that's the difference in perspective on the third way of knowing. The fourth way of knowing, according to the IB curriculum, is faith. So we are looking at faith in terms of religion, but ancient wisdom is beyond religion. It is eternal ideas of righteous conduct which predate all religions of the world. So faith has nothing to do with religion where ancient Indian wisdom is concerned. It has nothing to do with any religion. It is based on developing faith in one's own ability, and education must unravel the true unique potential of each one. Only then can you have your faith in your own ability, if you can experience your own ability at every moment. So how to bring out that unique potential and make a human being, a student, live in that unique potential, that is the challenge which ancient wisdom gives its education. So this is the way it interprets faith. It has nothing to do with religion. Now let's come to the next way which the IB curriculum sets. It is imagination. So let's look at that. Now, will human imagination be of what goals one should achieve in life and at this moment? Will it be guided by sense perception, or will it be guided by rising in Maslow's need hierarchy? That is the question. That is the difference between ancient wisdom's approach of rising in Maslow's need hierarchy and the current approach where we may say that imagination of goals is directed by sense experience. Now we come to intuition. Intuitively, should we be guided by sense perception or Maslow's higher level of needs? We leave this question for you to answer intuitively. And then let's look at the other two, which is memory and language. These memory and language will both be guided by our approach to all the 6 points that we have discussed above. So a curriculum that transforms the very way of knowing needs evidence of impact of its use in society. How do we believe that what is being said by ancient wisdom, is there any evidence of it? We've given evidence on two fronts: how to look after the body and how to make the mind live in awareness through education. So the Sehnavavtu approach was conceptualized thousands of years ago. Today it merges current knowledge with ancient Indian wisdom, studying both together as educare or Vidya Vahini. It is studied together and acted upon in a spirit of togetherness in society. This leads to an experience of individual well-being and collective well-being. Evidence of how its impact on education and how it transforms students has been shared earlier. This evidence is of how awareness of human essence is the first step to creating well-being. This needs a curriculum that creates character and values. The next evidence is about the importance of the human body. That is, the sense organs are within the human body. So it is not being denied. IB curriculum is not being denied. It is the very basis, but it is one part. It is not the first and the only way. To create well-being, the human body, the enabler of sense perception, must be looked after well. Therefore, now in this session we will look at the human mind. How does the human mind work in its fullness, or when it has been conquered fully by the human essence? So there are two alternatives. Either the human mind is being used fully, or it has been conquered fully by the human essence. Its basis is, in both cases, a transformed heart through the Sehna-Vavtu approach and sense perceptions housed in a healthy body. For hundreds of years, religions sought to create an awareness of essence in their own way. Can Sehna-Vavtu merge their efforts and faith for creating well-being now? Using the mind for awareness of essence that unifies religious sentiment with the application in life. Let us see what is that concept which unifies all religious sentiment with the application in life. And that can be summarized in a few words, which is service to man is service to God. This is ancient Indian wisdom's percept of how to use the human body, its sense perception, the awareness, how to apply the awareness in society to create well-being and create for the society as well as for the individual. And that can be summed up in service to man is service to God. So if you believe in God, do service to human beings as if God resides in them. So you are serving God. Even if you do not believe in God, get the feeling of self-satisfaction by doing service to other human beings. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goal SDG 6 includes availability and sustained management of water for all by 2030. Now we are stating the challenge. This is the evidence and the challenge and the evidence. How does a mind steeped in awareness with sense organs that are housed in a healthy body, how does it look on using the mind? Ancient wisdom also believes that there are 5 elements which are conferred to all humans gratis, and they give humans innumerable precious benefits, and these elements include light, heat, air, water. However, humans have to pay a price for so many small amenities like electricity and running water. But what price do they pay for the light of the sun which illumines the world? This light is a gift of nature. The soft breeze or a heavy downpour of rain are free, but water that comes free with the rain becomes chargeable for daily use. The most vital requirement for humans is water because it sustains life. 3/4 of the earth's surface is covered by water, yet drinking water for all is a challenge for the world. Water is described in the ancient Indian Upanishads as jivam or a life force. So let's find out what is the most important thing for human life. And we will see a lot of evidence pointing out that water is the most critical thing for humankind. Because let's say someone may argue, but 70% of the earth is covered with water. The counter argument would be, but less than 1% of the world's water is readily available for human use because nearly 97% is salty or otherwise undrinkable. 2% is locked in ice caps and glaciers. So for all of humanity's needs, 1% is left. So just as selfless love is the essence of human existence, can we identify what is it that dominates the human body? After all, to look after the body, we must find out what is the biggest component of the body. We are looking at sense perception, but what is it that will enable the sense perception? Approximately 60% of our bodies are made of water, and the body needs an adequate amount of water to carry out its basic functions and remain in good health. So some people say that humans can only survive for 3 days without water. If survival is threatened, even awareness of essence may diminish when survival gets threatened. Hence, for ensuring both, that is, awareness of essence and looking after the physical body, for both these jobs, water is essential. So, there are very little known challenges about the importance of water, which is the most vital element for us. And we are stating the challenges which the world is facing, but we are not realizing. Just as we realize that mental health is as big as a challenge as COVID, we are saying that for the physical existence and for the sense organs that IB curriculum says should be looked after for sustaining those very sense organs, water is one of the challenges. By 2025, which is just half a decade away, half of the world's population will be living in water shortage according to the World Health Organization. The China Daily had reported that in major cities with large populations such as Beijing, Shanghai and Mexico, the use of groundwater to meet the growing consumption has caused each of these cities to sink from a few centimeters to a few inches a year. Such a sinking, they say, is irreversible and creates real structural issues. Life Science says that water is essential for life. Life Science is a web-based magazine and honorary of the Webby Awards twice. It states that human beings can only survive for 3 days without water. So we need water, whether directly or indirectly, for almost everything we do and consume. Around 90% of the world's total managed water supply is used to grow food, not for human consumption, but to feed the livestock. A staggering 1/3 of the world's total cereal crop and more than 90% of the world's soya crop is used for animal feed. This is from an article from Huffington Post. Hence, a study by the university in Netherlands has concluded that per day a vegetarian diet uses 2,300 liters less water than a non-vegetarian diet, which is a huge amount. It's a reduction of 36%. There are also some other little known facts about water. The World Health Organization finds that 663 million people around the world don't have access to clean or safe water. That is, 1 amongst 10 of us doesn't have access to safe or drinking water. The WHO also finds that 1.8 billion out of the 7.8 billion population of the world use a drinking water source that is contaminated with feces, excreta. WHO then states that contaminated water can transmit diseases such as diarrhea, cholera, dysentery, typhoid, polio, and is estimated to cause about 502,000 diarrheal deaths each year. In many developing countries, children cannot find time to go to school because they spend the better part of the day walking miles to collect water to cover their basic individual and family needs for eating, drinking, cleaning and cooking. The UNICEF finds that even when children do go to school, they have no adequate water facilities. In 60 countries in the developing world, more than half of the primary schools have no adequate water facilities and nearly 2/3 lack adequate sanitation. WHO also states that there are 1.7 million child deaths per year because of pollution from contaminated water. So the well-being idea that emerges from mindfulness or conquering of mind, what should it be? Will it look at this issue? Ancient Indian wisdom has 2 approaches to the human mind, and we can see their impact on the merger of these approaches with quantum physics that we will do later. But the ancient Sehna Vavtu or Vidya Vahini way is to fill the mind with selfless love. We will look at the impact of these two approaches of conquering the mind and mindfulness. These are two alternate ways of approaching the mind. And if we get time and we get an opportunity, we will see how the whole understanding, comprehension of quantum physics and the way of living life gets transformed when we add these concepts into it. So in a state of mindfulness, the human mind is filled with the emotion of compassion. That is mindfulness. His Holiness the Dalai Lama describes his meditation as analytical meditation. This is using the mind fully to develop compassion and awareness which is above sense perception. If the mind is symbolized with the moon, which it is usually because the moon waxes and wanes and changes shape every day, and so does the mind keep changing its mood and its what it thinks. So if the mind is symbolized with the moon, the full moon or Buddha Purnima is celebrated. This is one way, the mindfulness. And what is the other way? The other way is to suffuse the mind with selfless love in a manner that the identity of the mind itself is lost. This can be a state of meditation with the eyes wide open while doing action. Here, effort is effortless. This approach makes shram or work as ashram. So that is the real significance of the word ashram, that it is effortless. The mind has been fully conquered. So human life, therefore, is divided in ancient Indian tradition in 4 ashrams, where the mind is fully conquered and effort is happening effortlessly out of selfless love. These 4 ashrams are the 4 different phases of life where 4 different nature of responsibilities are to be executed with the same effortlessness, as they are all suffused with selfless love. So the selfless love core remains the same. The nature of responsibilities around it keep changing with these phases in life, but the core remains the same. If the moon is taken as the symbol of the mind, only the crescent moon is used in these 4 ashrams. Only that very small part of the mind is involved in sense perception as is needed to sustain the body and sustain the work. The crescent moon adorns Shiva's head and is the symbol of Islam, one of whose meanings is, according to some scholars, equal love for all, which is the same language which is used to describe selfless love. So awareness of selfless love as a sense, using a healthy sense perception, seeks well-being by addressing the water crisis. Now this is the evidence that we are going to give. This village in South India, which was a hamlet of less than 200 population in the 1900s, with a road, with just one single road, it was part of a district and it was part of a region that had seen water scarcity for 150 years, if not more. The Sehnavavtu approach of searching for a research ethics course using research methodology started with facing or addressing the biggest problem that faces academics today. So that is the approach, that whatever is the biggest crisis, whatever is the biggest problem, let us solve that. So let us see if this approach is applied here. So we traced the genesis when we started our set of interactions. We traced the genesis of the problem using OECD's new goal and WF World Economic Forum report, and decided to address that need first. And because if our curriculum of research ethics using research methodology can show us how to address this issue, it can address all other issues thereafter. The approach of ancient wisdom, whether using mindfulness or suffusing the mind to annihilation by selfless love, is to tackle the biggest problem first. The research ethics course uses research methodology because evidence is needed for any research methodology, and a new global curriculum design must be based on evidence, because such evidence exists and we share it Is it possible to pick up the challenge of designing a new curriculum on ancient Indian wisdom's Sehnavavtu approach? For this, let us go back to that small hamlet of 1900s in the village, which was part of a district. So let us see the problems faced by the district. The district is one of the most arid and backward districts in the state. It has frequent droughts and very scanty rainfall. The three rivers, Penar, Hagarai and Chitravati, that flow in the district are non-perennial and remain dry during the summer months. Tanks and rivers run dry for most of the year and groundwater is also scarce. Even the groundwater that is available is brackish and very high in fluoride content. The excessive fluoride in the water was causing fluorosis, leading to widespread skeletal and dental deformations. We will show you soon what kind of problems are faced. We will show you a photograph. Thus, the people of the district have for long been suffering due to lack of water even for drinking. The villagers had to trudge long distances in the harsh, unforgiving heat just to fetch water for their daily consumption. But by now the hamlet had become a village, which too faced the same problems because the problem had not been addressed. The groundwater table in the three nearby mandals had gone down drastically and normal depth of the borewell was above 600 feet. Almost all habitations here were affected by excess fluoride in water, ranging from 2 ppm to 4 ppm as against the safe level of around 1 ppm. This excess fluoride causes severe health hazards like rheumatic arthritis, dental decay, intestinal problems, etc. So, where was the first step taken? The dharma of selfless love is to serve others first, yourself last. First the mother district was served, then the region, then 4 states and a metro town of Chennai. Then the nearby 3 mandalas were served last, after the master whose example is being given had given up the body. In 1930s, when we began our stories around 1930s, we had described him as a private individual. But by now, because of mastery over the mind, whether you can call it through either mindfulness or by suffusing the mind and annihilating it, when you become a master of the mind, that's when you become a mastermind, or that's when the ancient Indian tradition declares you as a master. So let's look at the human and economic face of the problem. You can see what has happened to the child's legs here, and the importance of the healthy body, which can only come from a land which needs water to provide food, and we have to use the mind to find a solution. So drinking water project was set up. Before I get into the details, let me first tell you that how much drinking water, what was the size of the drinking water project, the length of the pipelines that were laid for the drinking water project. This is evidence of Sehnavavtu approach or ancient Indian wisdom's application of the mind or mindfulness or conquering the mind to apply to address the biggest problem. How awareness in healthy sense perception within a human body addresses the biggest problem being faced. So the length of the pipelines which were laid for drinking water project was 4,296 kilometers. So let's look at the Indian map. The distance between the top and the toe, let's say the Kashmir and Kanyakumari, is only 2,887 kilometers. And this is by flight. And by road it is about 3,676 kilometers, less than the length of the pipelines laid. With its largest neighbor, India has a border of only 4,056 kilometers. And with Bangladesh, which it has a border which is the 5th longest border in the world. It has a border of 4,156 kilometers. So you can say this, the length of the project, the pipelines laid, was more than the fifth longest land border in the world. And just for comparison's sake, India's border with the second largest neighbor is 3323 kilometers. That is the size with which selfless love works. Now let's look at the first of the projects. It was in the drought-prone area, the district where there was scanty rain. Here, apart from direct pumping, 3 other schemes were used. So it was a very complicated and very detailed work. It included infiltration wells, summer storage tanks, bore wells, etc. And the very first project, according to India's best engineering company, which was chosen to execute it, it was the most complex, and like all subsequent ones, was of the highest standard and was completed in record time. The use of the mind. Excellence with goodness. The main trunk lines were about, in this first part of the project, were 750 kilometers. The branch lines were 1550 kilometers. There's 268 service reservoirs with over 300,000 liter capacity, some of them, and 125 service reservoirs with more than 60,000 liter capacity, some of them, 21 ground balancing reservoirs where some of them had 1 million liter capacity, and there were 40 booster stations, and there were 4 summer storage tanks in 60 acres and 32 acres and 3 storage tanks, and they had about 250 bore wells. If you see the size of the very first project, it led the government of India to recognize it. And what happened? The project was not kept in the private hands or in the trust or anything. It was handed over to the state government, free of cost. The complete unity of selfless love. It was handed over to the state government. The government, to recognize this, issued a postage stamp. And at that time, there were 5-year plans. The 9th 5-year plan was running, and the 9th 5-year plan calls it an unparalleled example of private initiative. So let us take an example of one project only, the Godavari district. This is not the first project, but subsequent to projects which were done after the first project in the northwestern part of the state. It was also subsequent to the drinking water project for the neighboring state's capital, that is Chennai. Now let's look at the Godavari River project, because it's got very interesting dimensions which have implications on well-being and human well-being. Because the Godavari is one of the greatest rivers of India, and unlike other rivers, its waters have not been harnessed enough. And a lot of poor people stay in East Godavari and West Godavari districts. And even though this river has so much water, people in these districts around often faced drinking water problems. So the East Godavari is full of forests, and there are tribal people living. And those people living just 10 to 15 kilometers away from the river faced an acute drinking water problem. They depended mostly on bore wells, most of which are anyway, they had almost dried up with the excessive use of groundwater over the years. And now the bore wells many of them contained harmful chemicals. And at some places the tribals were drawing water from streams, and in these streams they were some of them were bacteriologically unsafe. So how the poorly harnessed Godavari river, how does it flow in India? It crosses many states. For you to get an idea, we are just showing, please see this slide. It shows the Godavari river crossing the states from Maharashtra, Andhra, etc. So that was the flow of the river. And the first project was the most complex, as we saw, and the major metro project, that is the Chennai project, also had unique challenges. This one is a simple project, but has a very interesting social dimension. And as the region was a forest. No trees were cut while laying the pipes. This was one of the objectives that was set. And usually we find that projects done in forests are met with serious reservations by the tribals. However, in this case, it was unique. The tribals were the happiest with the project and supported it. The complexity was not in the mechanics of the planning, but in the interaction with people and the environment. No trees were to be cut, how to lay the pipes in that case, how to get the tribals involved. It was a unique convergence of the well-being agenda that addresses all dimensions of the well-being concept. Otherwise, technically speaking, the scheme was simple compared to all of the schemes done in other areas, because you construct an intake well near the water source, draw water from the Godavari river using pumps, send the water to a reservoir, there it gets pumped, treated, purified. Now it's fit to drink, it's distributed through pipes to the villages. And in the villages there are local storage tanks, and here water is sent to cisterns and flows into taps. That's fine. Now, the lives of the tribals in the interior Godavari district were actually intertwined with the forest, the seasons, and everything that grows here, because they live off the forest produce. Whatever is on the mountain slopes is there. They cut the trees and they cultivate the pulses and some cereals. Now, in recent times, the government had imposed certain restrictions on felling of trees, and so this is a picture of what the terrain looks like in these areas, and this is how the project progressed. And the most experienced and reputed contractor in India was chosen for this. The human, environment and technology working in harmony for well-being is demonstrated as the water from intake wells at collection stations to filtration plants, pumped and sent through pipes to storage tank. So you can see how the pipeline traveled through the forest to the villages. And details, the excellence that was there in engineering, details like sand bedding under pipes were attended to very closely in the first project. This photograph is from that first project, where water is taken from assured sources, etc. And now coming back to East Godavari, if you see the intake wells in East Godavari cater to the drinking water needs of about 300 villages. And the West Godavari district has its water treatment plant elsewhere. So this completes our evidence of well-being. The first part of the project was the technical brilliance required in that district, which was dry for 150 years. We use the Godavari as an example of the human environment interaction, the tribals, how excellence and goodness were not compromised within any dimension. And now we come to a third part of how a different set of challenges. This is in Chennai, where where there were a different set of challenges because the nature of the problem was very different. A canal was to be inaugurated in 1983 by the Prime Minister of India and the Chief Ministers of two state governments to give drinking water to the city of Chennai. But it was a very poorly functioning canal, mostly resulting in hardly any water to the city of Chennai. And it was planned to give 15 TMC, but only half a TMC water was all that reached the reservoir. And the reasons were all because of no excellence, very poor work, which led to evaporation, seepage, erosion of canal walls. And after a few years, you can see what the state of the canal was and what happened after this project. Chennai, which had lived with water shortage from the late 19th century, in the years before the project, some areas of the city were without water supply for 3 days at a time, especially when they needed it most during the harsh and humid summers. The city needed about 750 million liters of water per day, and were making do with only 250 million liters. So there were long hours of waiting for a few liters of water from the community water sump. Till this is how the project changed everything. You contrast it with the way water was flowing in the earlier situation and how water is flowing now. But it did not happen without excellence at work, and excellence of the highest order. The project used the latest technology to deliver the highest quality possible for very reliable supply. And was it a small drinking water project? How long did it take? What work did it involve? From soil excavation of 1.7 million cubic meters to silt removal of 0.1 cubic meters, hard rock excavation, stone masonry work, rough stone work, cement concrete lining. So it was a project which took 1 year to complete and cost about $60 million. So how many villages were covered by the drinking water schemes of all the projects put together? 1621 villages and Chennai metro city. This is the largest social benefit project undertaken anywhere in the world by a private charitable organization. How many people were benefited by these drinking water schemes? 31.9 lakhs plus city of Chennai with a population of 7 million. To get an idea of what a beneficiary size over 10 million means, we've seen a beneficiary sizes over 10 million. Let us realize that New Zealand's total population is just 3.8 million. So you're looking at 3 times the number. Belgium is about 10.3 million. So you've given drinking water to all of Belgium. Hungary is about 9.8 million. Sweden is about 8.9 million. So the drinking water project has this kind of scope. And what is the total project cost? 6,830 million rupees. And all the projects were executed in record time by one of India's top engineering and construction conglomerates, Larsen and Toubro. So it's excellence and goodness. And now let's come to the most important question. What is its return on investment and what is the cost to the consumer? We said earlier that sense perception looks at winning. Sense perception looks at what is in it for me. So every business asks, what is my return on investment? And every consumer wants to know, what is the cost to the consumer? So the return of investment is zero and the cost to the consumer is zero. For education, healthcare and drinking water, the sense perception route of the business models can ask, what is the return on investment? Should we invest in it? In all the 3 cases, education project would have been rejected, the healthcare project would have been rejected, and the drinking water project would have been rejected. But should it have been rejected? That becomes the question. Wisdom viewed well-being created by using a benefit-cost ratio, because anything that is divided by 0 becomes infinity. So if you look at the infinite well-being potential, then by that criteria, the education, healthcare and water projects were accepted because anything divided by 0 cost gives infinity. And that's the well-being that is being created. So implementing the essence of the Sehnavavtu mantra is what is important for us. So we need to see what happened to the ownership of the drinking water projects after completion. The drinking water projects covered multiple states. Each state has a different state government. The projects after completion were given to the respective state governments. Let us revisit lecture 2 now. What did it say about the Sehnavavtu mantra? It said, what brings a mantra to life? What is it that brings a mantra to life? It's application. What will bring your research to life? its application. Why not give a mantra a chance to show how its application can take place in our modern academic curriculum? We have given a chance and we have got the evidence. The mantra signifies seeking a oneness that my problem becomes yours and your problem becomes mine. Lecture 2 said, can we do such an exchange and share each other's process of dealing with issues, learning and teaching simultaneously, expanding our vision, exploring our potential together? Is the evidence that we have given pointing to that? But is this evidence acceptable? The nature of evidence is this nature of evidence that we have presented a random activity done just once, demonstrating the nature of possibilities of creating well-being? This is not its nature. Instead, the evidence is A. The evidence shows how a step-by-step approach is necessary for creating well-being. B. The evidence shows that the first steps are the use of the human body, that is the sense perception that IB curriculum is talking of. We are not denying it. The first step is the use of the human body, its sense perception, but directed by discrimination imparted to the human mind. Then the nature of use of the human mind is demonstrated. Then thirdly, what makes the evidence acceptable? That the evidence is not of 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. The evidence is over 4 decades. It is of activities that are continuing over a prolonged period of time and continue today as verifiable examples of well-being. Next, they may be started by one individual, but that they sustain even after the master has not in the physical body shows that they are not dependent on existence of an individual for sustenance. This is the most critical part of the evidence. It had to wait for more than half a decade to give the evidence that yes, it sustains and sustains just as well, as efficiently, with as much goodness, with as much excellence, without the person who has started it being present. Next, there is evidence that it has been replicated outside India, as the drinking water project was replicated in Zambia, as are the schools and institutes all over the world. Researchers can find out more about it. Then next, the well-being idea is being worked on in India and overseas in ever-changing situations to provide relief and contribute according to the need of the new situation which is arising from time to time. For example, currently the food crisis in Africa due to loss of crops by locusts is their focus, where containers of food are being sent to Africa. Then income is a starting point for the current indexes of well-being. It may also be the starting point for creating it. Some may feel like this. This evidence disproves that. The initiator was not an industrialist. He was a resident of what was a hamlet in 1900s. This proves that the resolve of well-being in the mind has a power. And finally, OECD, World Economic Forum now seek to transform character, values, attitudes. The evidence here shows that this is possible. So what else did Lecture 2 state? Let's go back to that. It said, and I quote, "What do you want your research to achieve?" It recommended, Lecture 2 recommended that be the change you want to see in the world. Did we see an example of be the change? The lecturer also asked, can your mind use a research methodology to experience the change you want your research to achieve? Feeling pain of those who need healthcare and drinking water, a method to achieve the change was worked out. Has this research shown how to be the change that well-being wants to achieve? Has it redefined dimensions of the problem itself that we want, as we said? In lecture 2, try to redefine the dimensions of the problem. Has it not defined the dimensions of human well-being? It has shown us what can be the dimensions of human well-being. And did it not start with an inner search? Because lecture 1 asked us to explore the unseen dimensions first. Explore all possibilities. We have seen the possible depth of dimensions of well-being and the envisaged solutions. We have seen how they were executed. From this, method and ethics emerge. This evidence is the basis of acceptance of our hypothesis that social pain can be reduced by use of education. Only the ethical basis of ideas, starting with methods, needs to be revisited from an inner search that can lead to research. The search for research ethics using research methodology. What did lecture 1 have to state about it? It stated that search is the basis of research. So what was the search for the solution of creating well-being? The OECD and World Economic Forum had searched for a solution. We had to search to find out how such solution had been made possible in the past. We searched and found that ancient wisdom has the solutions. This was our research. What is it that we can teach that internet cannot? Is there a qualitative aspect of teaching that is not measurable? That is why teachers are irreplaceable today. Is there any evidence of the transformative power of thought which is personally imparted by teachers? Ancient wisdom starts each class with a mantra or sahna vavtu. Can this teacher-oriented path of wisdom be the third approach to teaching after the classroom and the case study methods which we have used for the last 150 years? Is there evidence today of its efficacy in alleviating social pain? This was our search. As we found in the age of big data in our lecture 2, a big data consultant's view, and I'll re-quote that big data's consultant's view, and he says, and I quote, "With the advent of big data, quantitative analytics is receiving more attention and buzz than ever. However, it is our impression that the vast majority of quantitative analytics is descriptive or predictive and does not attempt to explain to decision makers what it is describing or predicting," unquote. This is called the qualitative side of quantitative research. Is our evidence giving the qualitative side of what quantitative GDP may not be reflecting? Is well-being measurable or is it immeasurable? Yet quantitative data can give us an idea of its impact. We have used quantitative data here to give you some idea of its impact. The search for research ethics using research methodology, this was our project. How does the method lead to its methodology of creating ideas and executing them? This was a challenge. What was the method that led to social pain? We had to identify that. Then we had to find a method which alleviated social pain. This method should have evidence to back it. The nature of the evidence should be verifiable, despite it not being quantified fully, as it may be in the area of individual experiences of beneficiaries, yet there should be a quantitative data to back its claims. Finally, the evidence should not be of a phenomena that has happened once and can be replicated if desired. It should be of a nature that can sustain itself. Not only that, it should currently be sustained in an environment different from when it started. That is, it should not be dependent for its sustainability on any one individual. Finally, the idea should give evidence of its self-replicating nature to create continuous well-being by alleviating social pain. Which methodology do we use to research it? Should we use narrative or stories of individuals or ethnography to understand the context and culture there? Or should we use a grounded approach, grounded in field data or phenomenological experience? Or should we use a case study? Just as a teacher may be using the essence of all of them, making his or her teaching different from the internet. Can we too rely on the sense of all methodologies as a part of research? Of course, our presentation of research should suit academic requirement. This was the slide we used to show that a teacher whom many people feel the internet can replace actually is using the spirit of many methods, and therefore a teacher in many ways is irreplaceable. Not only is he irreplaceable, the teacher is the beginning of education. So what is the spirit of ideas of research ethics? We discussed earlier that the spirit deals with an inner search. Once the spirit has been absorbed, the search part of the work is over. Seeking the spirit gives an inner conviction that helps the researcher overcome many obstacles later. Wherein lies the spirit of research ethics? We searched within and found that without ethics, there can be no way of making sure that the research has validity. If data is manipulated or presented in a manner that reveals less than what it conceals, the spirit of research ethics gets violated even if the content meets academic standards. The idea is to create content that prevents discontent in society later. This discontent has been identified by World Economic Forum and OECD as social pain, resulting from 150 years of application of many ideas. Mysteriously, their use has, instead of creating well-being, led to worrisome results. Did the idea of ethics emerge naturally from search? Truth, righteous conduct, the first two human values are its basis. How our search began in lecture 1. Can it transform our choice of PhD topic? We researched it subsequently for a research methodology so that research ethics curriculum can emerge from it. Are current course parameters used globally sufficient to meet the new requirements of OECD and World Economic Forum? If we create new ones, such research will need firm evidence. We have sought to give it here. Can the basis of ethics that emerges from within, as shown by our data, be a guide for our search, and can it guide our research? What implications does it have on our curriculum? Let us see current curriculum ideas. First, to assess if they can lead to this data, we repeat a slide from lecture 2. Research ethics should help us select nature of our topic 2. The nature of topics researched should be such that their application alleviates social pain. This is the current course curriculum that we find usually in universities about research ethics: accountability, transparency, correctness of data, plagiarism, intellectual properties, patents, retaining of data, authorship of research articles and other publications. And we see our approach to research ethics is very different. New concepts and method in research is needed to address social pain issue, because those topics we did not find them addressing social pain adequately. The new concept that we are working on deals with inner emotions and feelings of humans. Can education transform them? If so, how can it transform them? When should they be transformed? Where should they be transformed? What is the curriculum that can do it? Who will do the transformation? Will concepts that arise have universal applicability? That becomes a question for us. Can the research methodology that gives rise to ethics and research ethics be used as a basis of researching everything? Just as the potential of a curriculum should have a spirit that can be used universally, can the evidence of its application address not only the dimensions of well-being, but have the ability to create a conviction to apply its concepts in different situations and contexts? These questions led to further questions for us. These questions were asked in the middle of lecture 2, before we saw the conclusions of OECD and World Economic Forum. Has our research methodology changed the approach you have to your research topic? We repeat the slide shown in lecture 2. The world needs research ideas whose applications can alleviate social pain, which are just concentrating on creating prosperity today. This is what we showed in lecture 2, that the world situation is ever changing, and can we offer a lasting solution in an ever-changing situation? And we are finding that such a need is not being fulfilled in a satisfactory way. And can your research see larger and larger needs so that, and this course should help you address the largest need that you can satisfy of society. So what should be the new basis of a curriculum for research ethics? We have seen that education has an impact on ideas that individuals have. Those who are suffused with such ideas, we have seen, have different motivations. These motivations lead them to serve others and seek different goals. If these ideas and motivations are not transformed during education, it may be difficult later. Transformation is not just an academic concept. The nature of context of education has to be changed from information dissemination using a factory line production line attitude, to how human potential can be developed through transformational concepts and practices. Now that there is evidence of sustainability of well-being ideas imparted through ancient India's ab initio mantra, Sehna Vavtu, that is on record, what should be our next step? Our next session will proceed from here. What were the ideas that made ancient Indian civilization last for thousands of years? How were these ideas communicated, practiced, applied, and finally applied? What was taught? How was it taught? Where was it used? When was it taught? Who will teach? What are the qualifications of the teacher and the graduating student? With these questions, we leave you to think over these questions for your answers and your further questions. Thank you so much for your time and attention in this session. Thank you.